Hey guys, it's Vinny, and today I wanted to talk about a topic that has been on my mind a lot recently. And basically, I just saw an article that relates to it, so I thought, hey, why not talk about it now? So I follow this website called The Mighty on Facebook, and basically what it is, it's a news and media outlet that talks about people with disabilities from mental, intellectual, developmental, physical, and those who have disabilities due to a chronic illness. So there's like a wide variety. Now, this site in general has received some criticism from people with disabilities because a lot of the articles themselves kind of focus on the perspective of people without disabilities dealing with someone or living with someone or having someone in their lives that has a disability. Now, for a site that's supposed to basically lift the voices of those that live with disabilities, I think this is really inappropriate to do because honestly, I think that people who are living with someone that has a disability or are taking care of someone or has some sort of mentorship with someone with a disability, I think there is a space that needs to be basically separated from the people who have the disabilities because nothing nothing kills your day than seeing someone essentially talk about you and how difficult it might be to handle you. So yeah, that's definitely not uplifting, and I really believe that, of course, I think everyone's entitled to talk about their experiences and they're very real. And I'm sure, things can be very challenging for people. But I think that's either best suited to a therapy session where you can talk about whatever and sort of vent about your day to day life experiences, or you can deal with it by talking to others who are also going through similar life situations. So, find yourself a website, a forum, some sort of space, a group that you can meet up with people who are going through the same sort of thing as you are. For example, maybe if you're a parent of a child with a disability, maybe you can find a group that, is just comprised solely of parents that don't have disabilities that have children that do, because that space needs to be separate from those with disabilities. So now that I got that out of the way, there's a lot of articles on this website that especially cater to the sort of inspiration porn theme that's going on a lot with stories that have to do with disabilities. And, I'm not liking that because the thing is that, when I'm looking for stories with people talking about their lived experiences, one, I want it to come from them, and two, I don't need to hear about what it's like. I don't need to hear about what it's like when your life is great. And I know that might sound a certain way to some people, but let me tell you that when you feel utterly and completely isolated and, alienated by your own disabilities, and then you read a story about how this other person with your disability is doing 10 times better than you and has accomplished X, Y, and Z, it doesn't inspire you. Well, I can't, that's a generalization, but it doesn't inspire me. You know what does inspire me? What inspires me is reading about a story of how difficult it is to get through a day, how difficult it is to take a shower, how difficult it is to socialize with other people, to go to your appointments, to deal with suicidal ideation. These things inspire me because these are the things that really make my life hard to live. And they really mean a lot to me is because my everyday sort of functioning kind of always interacts with my disability in some aspect. So anyway, it was to my shock that they actually put an article on there that I was like, wow, this is kind of nice. And the title of the article, if I can remember correctly, was What doesn't kill you doesn't make you stronger. Now, this is obviously a play on the quote, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And let me just say, as an aside, I hate that quote. I hate it a lot. I also hate the song. But yeah, I really can't stand that quote because, again, that kind of saying, those kind of, inspirational quotes, they go into sort of this sort of category that kind of feels very like living in an ideal world. Like it seems like the kind of advice that someone would give you when one, they don't have your life experience and they have no idea what they're talking about. It's like one of those things where, you tell someone about your depression, for example, you're like, oh my God, I haven't been able to keep a job down because of my depression. And someone's like, yeah, I was depressed once, but, I actually said to myself, well, I'm not going to let this bother me anymore. And then it went away. Yeah, it kind of sounds like that. So, reading the article, I was just really I was really excited because this person was talking about how, sometimes their inner, so to speak, their inner demons, they do win. Sometimes it's hard to just go day by day living because their disability does affect them in a negative way. And I mean, I know for some reason it's hard for people to understand this, but disabilities debilitate you. I mean, that's kind of why they're called disabilities, because they disable you to some capacity. Now, it doesn't make you useless, it doesn't make you weak, it doesn't make you any of those things. But what it does do is it does limit you in a sense, whether it is the way you speak with other people, whether it's the way you think, whether it's the way you behave, whatever. There's some sort of limitation. And if not a limitation, perhaps a barrier, so to speak. Maybe that's a better way to say it. But either way, there's something that makes your life a little bit harder. So when I read this, I was like, finally, an article that fully acknowledges that having a disability is sometimes really freaking awful. And this is something that people deal with on a day-to-day basis. It isn't like, it goes away. But I was just really still shocked that most of the comments on this article were negative. And basically, to sum up, like, the average comment was basically, I disagree. If you're here right now, that means you've overcome your past. You're a much stronger person. If you weren't, you wouldn't be here. Blah, 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 etc., etc. Now, let me get this straight. I have no problem, no qualms with people taking inspiration from whatever source, maybe. Whether it's a quote, whether it's an event, a photo, it doesn't matter. I have no problem with that because, we're all individuals. We all find different things to be uplifting. So if you find that particularly inspiring to you, then that's great. I'm glad that it can help you. But the problem is when that quote leaves the disabled person's experiences and people who aren't disabled use this against us. See, here's the thing. When these kind of like inspiration porn articles are put out there by news outlets, what happens is it kind of creates a very distorted image of what it's like to be a person with disabilities. And what happens is someone, a typical person who does not have any sort of disability will see this and think, wow, look how incredible this person is. They have depression and they can still, manage a 60-hour job, and look at them looking in their, working in their career field that's, this and that. And wow, look at that. I can't do that. Look how great they are. But the point of those articles are often not to inspire those that do have disabilities, but rather it kind of exists as a sort of emotional what I like to call an emotional blackmail towards people who do have disabilities. So, for example, let's say you're having a really bad time with your PTSD. Let's say you get into a conversation with this person and they start cornering you, which I'm gonna assume most people don't like. But let's say, for example, being cornered or feeling like someone's approaching you triggers your PTSD. And so you kind of freak out and whatever, and you react to it. And this person tells you like you're overreacting, that they didn't do anything wrong, etc., etc. And so you then basically try to explain to them what your PTSD is like and how it's like to, deal with sort of the unexpected symptoms that comes from it. And then this person, they pull up their phone, they're like, hey, I read an article about a person with PTSD once, and they never went through that. They don't have a problem with that. And that's the thing. That's the thing right there that I cannot stand, is that if we ever talk about how wonderful, let's just say how great we feel about our accomplishments, it is always twisted and used against us. It is always out there and exists for people who are not disabled to come back and say, hey, I saw this one person with, such and such disorder, and clearly you're not trying hard enough, because if this person can do it, then you can too. Or even worse, it's like, you must not have depression because this person's doing X, Y, and Z and you're not, so you must just be lazy. And this is extremely harmful. And this is the kind of problem that exists with articles that are meant to frame people with disabilities as the everyday person, as someone who can do it all, as someone who can be just like you and me. Because here's the thing, is that I'm not just like you. I'm not. I have a disability. So I live differently. I experience things differently. I have different thoughts, different behaviors, some behaviors that are not even logical. They may make sense in the context of my disability and my experiences, but they're not logic based in an objective way. So it's like, no, I'm not the same. And I don't want to be categorized as this monolith of being, hey, you're no different than the rest of us, because that's BS. So I'm tired of this narrative that is put out there that's saying, how quote unquote normal we are. And it's like, there's a difference between, dehumanizing someone and othering them and kind of making space for them in their experience and letting them speak about their own, their own life experiences. So yeah, it just, it sucks to hear all these things, because when I talk about my pain, it's real. And it's something that just doesn't go away. Sure, maybe not every day I experience my disabilities in a negative way, but more often than not, most of my days are spent kind of navigating my interactions with my disabilities, whether it's my depression or my anxiety or my personality disorder, but they're always there. They're always trickling through, and I always have to navigate with it. So I want to hear about the stories that aren't just about, how wonderful it is to overcome obstacles. I want to hear about how awful it is when we can't do it, how horrible it is that some people can't even get out of the bed, how awful it is to not have a job for 3 years because we can't manage to cope with our suicidal ideations or our homicidal ideations. I want to hear about those stories, because to me, those are the most inspiring. There's something about hearing someone's experience in the most vulnerable moments that are really telling. And I really think those stories are vastly more important than the stories that like to throw sparkles and glitter to camouflage how really awful one's life can be when having a disability. I'm not here to be somebody's prop. I'm here to tell you about what my life is like. And that includes the ugliness. That includes me taking, a month to finally decide that I want to record anything. That includes me not working for 4 years. That includes me having self-harming tendencies, me having suicidal thoughts, me not going out or avoiding talking to people because I just want to spend all day thinking about how my life isn't worth it. It's stuff like that that really is helpful, because let's just say that most of those articles, anyway, that are meant to be inspiration, are often written from the perspective of someone who doesn't have a disability. It's usually like, I just saw this post. I forgot who reblogged it. It was probably a cat, but it was about this man who was a performer at a theater, and he noticed that a child that had, I believe, developmental disabilities, was screaming, and this mother was doing her best to try to calm the child down, and everybody in the audience were booing and glaring, blah blah blah, and how this actor just took a stand. It was like, listen, you know, this mother's doing the best she can, and can't you see how hard she's trying, and blah 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 blah, whatever. But the point of the article was meant to make the actor look like this kind of martyr, this hero. It's like, wow, look at him standing up for being a decent person. And it's like, people then become props and become this sort of weird kind of achievement that the other person uses in order to feel good about themselves. And it's really creepy to me, and it's really like dehumanizing. And I know most people don't mean it to be that way, but it's like, hey, can you kind of stick in your lane and stick to your experiences and not kind of speak over somebody else? Thank you. So yeah, so I want to hear stories about how miserable it is to live your life. I know that's basically what it sounds like, but no, for real. I want to hear stories about, what it's like, what it's really like to live with your disability. So, feel free to share this video, feel free to share your own stories, and let me know if any of you out there actually have links to sites that do talk about mental illness and that do have sort of their own sections for mental illness, because I can't find them. Where are they? I can't find them. Yeah, that would be great. So I hope you guys enjoyed this talk and hope to do this again soon. Bye.